And here we are, live talk with Becky Chernek. And I got to tell you, it's all about dealer insights tonight. And I have an amazing featured guest speaker on with me tonight. Everyone knows Julie Douglas, and she is the president of Dealer Pay. And I'm going to tell you right now, she is very well known as the Sales Lady Extraordinaire. And you're going to find out why in a couple of minutes before we get started. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty. We're back in the trenches. We are going to be talking about the headaches, the challenges, the frustrations that, our sales teams have, or F&I folks have, service, and not to mention that comptroller when it comes to credit card challenges and transactions, and the systems are so antiquated. I don't get it. When I was in a platform F&I director recently, even, I got to tell you, it took forever long in a day to go ahead and get a credit card transaction completed. It just is so frustrating. And not only that, it's like, where did it go? How was it posted? And when you have that comptroller coming down on you, you've got problems. So we're going to be talking about, how do we make this more efficient? How do we cut back on the time, streamline this whole thing, and cut back on the cost, the fees, and make it so that we're impacting our profit. Not only that, compliance is so super important too, right? So I'm all for that. But before we get started with Julie, I just want to make sure that we are, and I'm Becky Chernek, and I have been providing the very best in automotive training I've been in automotive retail for the past 30 years. And I have a background that I feel like this is everything that we do in the industry. And also, I have a reputation as being the champion in F&I. All right, so listen up. I went ahead and I put my bio as well as my link to my website in the description here on the podcast. So if you like what we're talking about, check it out. Make sure you contact me, because here's the thing. If you're not running $2,000 per car, you're leaving profit on the books. Okay, so we are going live on, we're going live on YouTube. We're going live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. Okay, so share, like, and subscribe. I've got Julie here with me tonight, and let's go ahead, and for our dealers and viewers, if you wouldn't mind, get us started and share your brief background with us.
Hello, thank you, Becky. So I am Julie Douglas, yes, the Sales Lady Extraordinaire. I loved your years in the business. I've been in the payments business for 25 years. I own and operate Dealer Pay, which is a payments and point of sale platform specific to dealers. And what our solutions do are not just help you transact payments, but we provide solutions to help you be more efficient, productive, profitable, and that compliance word that you mentioned as well. So very happy to be here, Becky.
Well, I think it's super cool to have you, because, this has always been a major, like I said earlier, a major pain point for F&I folks. And, I've been in the F&I world for a very long time, but why does it continue to take so long to process a credit card transaction? It's like pulling teeth. And I don't know, for me, I sat and I experienced it firsthand. And it's the double entry. It is a lot of extra work. And if it's not done right, it's not posted correctly. And we have all sorts of other issues when it comes to that comptroller. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to have issues with a comptroller, no. Right? We want to make it an easy, solution for everyone. We want to streamline this. So you come along and before we get into all that, you know what I want to talk about too? I want to talk about your background, how you got where you are today. I mean, like how you really got here.
Sure. I mean,
How'd you start?
I've always been a salesperson. I mean, I started very young selling copy machines. I live in St. Louis, so I would walk the streets of St. Louis and walk into buildings trying to sling these $50,000 copy machines. I did all right. But, I wanted to do something a little bit more dynamic. So, I did get into the payment space. It happened to be also in St. Louis where I sold my first dealership. It was an amazing experience because even at the time, being in my early 20s, I didn't know anything about dealers. Quickly did I learn that this industry is so dynamic. I explained to other industry folks that are in my space, dealerships are like having 5 to 6 businesses under one roof. So the appeal to a salesperson in the payment space is you have all these various departments, these high volumes, high average tickets. So in the payment space, that's attractive because we make money on the transaction, right? So I was successful in landing my first deal. Really what stood out on that particular deal was he said, you just give me a fair price. And when I call you, I need you to answer the phone. And I did. I answered the phone. I waited, for weeks and weeks for them to just really get ironed out with the solution. And finance, they would call at like 9:00 at night and say, Julie, I've got this American Express. This customer is trying to put on their, card for this deposit or this down payment. How much is this going to cost me? So I answered the phone and I told them, and it happened to be such a great relationship. I still work with that dealership group today.
Well, that's super cool. I mean, I wish, there's one dealer group that I got to say that I continue to work with, and that's super important. And that tells you everything you need to know, right? That
yes,
they
absolutely.
Who you are and respect what you've done for them over the years, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
you've helped them not only be a lot more efficient, but hopefully save them a tremendous amount of cost when it comes to what it takes to process credit card payments, for crying out loud. I find that whole thing super fascinating because that's never necessarily been something that I've dug in deep with as far as the cost of transactions, credit card transactions. Now I've felt the pain of, credit card processing and transactions and what it takes to go ahead and put that together, which seems, almost like it's a super drag. It's like whether you're in F&I and you have these independent stations, that these guys think all you're doing is having a customer just sign the e-sign and you're good to go. There's a lot more to be said about that, right? It doesn't happen like that.
No, it doesn't.
Yes.
And specific to F&I, there's a lot of risk involved, right?
Okay.
So there's certain elements where what we've run into is a lot of dealers, they don't want you to put a deposit or down payment on a credit card. So there's also the concept of check writing. That's a thing, or check guarantee. So there's other elements to payment processing, but with respect to credit cards, there's risk. Is that customer going to drive off with this car tonight and then charge it back, or have some kind of a situation where, maybe that transaction isn't solidified for the dealer. And as you mentioned, that comptroller or that controller is going to come find you that next morning if there are any challenges with what you did that previous day. So it's fascinating. And, when I started in this industry quite a while ago, it wasn't super common for dealerships to take the amount of volume in finance as they did in fixed ops. So it has evolved over the years because payment processing, electronic payment processing, is a convenient method for customers to pay. But also credit card processing, different from debit card processing, is they don't have the money in the checking account. So they have to use a card. If you need $2,000 down to
That's
get
right.
into this deal, you're going to break out your Chase, your Citi, your whatever to get the deal done, right?
Amen. We're going to ask for it all day long. We're going to, right? It's like, okay, we might not have cash here, but let's take a look at that credit card stuff. Let's take a look at those credit card balances and see if we can't put a deal together. Yes.
Yes.
So that's
yes.
the first thing. Second thing, maybe that they go
Yes.
to. So
yes, absolutely. And there's also the concept of truth in lending and making sure you don't have borrowed money on top of borrowed money, and a lot of dealers.
How do you work that? I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no.
How is that dealer pays deal? Like, how is that your responsibility? Like, are you in there training dealers about this? Like, because I have conversations as an F&I consultant and also, as a platform F&I director. Before we go ahead and start taking credit card down payments, let's talk about your responsibility to that.
Right.
And
well, I will say that
about that.
Yeah, I will say years ago, and I'm aging myself here, but years ago, it used to be where the lender agreements with the dealerships would prohibit any kind of other borrowed monies associated with the same transaction. I think a lot of those agreements are different now than they used to be, because they realize that consumers don't have a lot of other options, but it's really the individual agreement that your lender has with the dealership. Dealer Pay comes in and says, hey, if it's a deposit or down payment, we're going to give you the method to take that transaction. But if there is a challenge with a credit card, there's also the option for a debit card. So the debit card is coming right out of a checking account. It's not considered borrowed money, or even a check, ACH, things like that. So the things that we really teach our finance managers when we implement our solutions is, offer up other payment types that aren't necessarily a credit card.
Right. So what would that be?
Debit, ACH, and then there's the concept of a check writing. I mean, years ago when I was in the biz, hold checks were a thing. Can I give you this check to deposit next week and this next check to deposit the week after? A lot of that business is still happening, not as much as it used to be, though. Now the lenders, I feel, are getting a little bit more agreeable when it comes to putting a down payment on a credit card or a debit card. But
so I find that a bit okay. So like when you're talking about hold checks, we used to do plenty of hold checks when I was growing up. We hold check this in 2 weeks, a month, whatever.
It's a slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope. It's like, are they ever going to pay? And you have this money down showing on a contract that we got $2,000 down when we don't. We really don't. Right? It's a whole check. And I'm like, guys, let me ask you a question. Do you think maybe you could actually write a check? I mean, put something in the deal. But you've got a form that you have the customer sign. Okay, some sort of a whole check kind of thing. And it doesn't fly, right? It doesn't fly. So here's the thing. You got Santander out there and some of these others, and they'll buy a deal in a heartbeat freaking second. But the very minute they find out that customer's got a repo, they're on the dealer like there's no tomorrow. Yeah. It's like, okay, we have a whole check. We don't have real cash down. I guess you guys are on the hook for this deal.
Yep. So, and, some of the solutions that I used to sell more, but I do still have this option today. is, guaranteeing the hold checks for the dealership. So if it bounced or, whatever the case may be, the dealership was still made whole. But can you imagine those percentages?
Well, we used to do guaranteed credit, and that too, credit guaranteed check. I forget the name of it, but we guaranteed the check,
Sure.
and that was so. And there was something with that. I don't remember all the ins and outs with it. And then some dealers got away from doing it, and because it didn't hold its weight. I don't know. But the thing is, today, I would think in 2025, it's interesting. So I've actually gone through some video content. I used to do so much interviews. And so I was looking in some of that, and it's interesting, like what we were talking about in 2017, 16, 15, and you've been there with me right through it. I mean, you've been there. What are we doing today? Are we doing the same thing that we did 10 years ago
I hope not.
and expecting a different result? I mean, I think in some cases we are. It's like, why do we continue to work with antiquated credit processing systems? Why do we do that? And we have a question coming in from Mike Moran. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Does a dealer receive any financial benefits by offering your services? That is a really great question. Thank you, Mike.
So, that's a kind of a loaded question, Mike, because of course it does. Of course, dealerships have a financial benefit, but it's really about more of what you're not losing versus what you're gaining. I mean, my services that I provide, and of course I haven't, talked about all of its detail, but my service provides solutions for dealers in each department. And then in finance, it's a little bit different than fixed ops, because in finance, you're looking for quick ways to obtain that sale. So getting a deposit, a down payment, etc. But, the financial benefit, as opposed to just the process of accepting that transaction or that payment, comes in other forms later on, like, staying compliant, making sure you've got all the necessary securities in place, making sure you've dotted your I's, crossed your T's, but also time savings, offering customer convenience, things like that, that really do help the dealership, retain customers, retain all of the business from sales to fixed ops, et cetera. And I know we're going to talk about it, Becky, but even the concept of passing the credit card fees to the customer.
Yeah, I want to talk through that, because I never really got into that as much as I probably should have, as that was maybe more of a, I don't know, CFO responsibility than it may be a platform F&I director's responsibility. I'm going to pass the buck. But that is just like anything else. It's like our dealer agreements, lender agreements. It's like, some of these guys hit us, for a 90-day chargeback versus some others that you can negotiate some of the terms. And I think that's important, that dealers are digging in and determining these fees. I also think it's important that dealers understand that, does it make sense to pass some of the fees to the customer? I've had conversations like this, and I said, why are you absorbing all the fee? Why wouldn't you give the customer a choice? Debit card, credit card. We're not going to take the fee. But it's tough can you manage that? Can you stick to it, right? Be stick to it when it comes to what happens when you have a customer who says, I'm not doing that. I can go up the street and they'll take my fee. What do you say about that?
Well, I mean, for the longest of time, dealers had a cap, like an amount that they could take a credit card payment, a deposit or down payment. So a lot of times $3,000 for some time is in my head. And anything over 3,000, they were prohibited to take because of the fee, right? And dealership effective rates are somewhere around 2%. So if you think 2% on top of the deposit or down payment, all of a sudden we have shrinking margins, right? So the concept of passing the fee to the customer is very much advantageous for the dealer, but we also have to give your customer some options. They can most certainly pay with a debit card. They can most certainly pay with a check. But if they're going to use their, Southwest Airlines, rewards card to, collect the points, then the dealership should be able to pass that fee back for the customer to pay for it, basically.
All right. So we have Chris. His customers also want to get their mile. There you go. So I've seen vehicles purchased on a credit card, the entire vehicle.
I've seen $100,000 transaction on a credit card before.
Wow.
I mean,
so is the fee, so is the customer paying the fee? I know 3,000. Okay. Well, after $3,000, we don't want to do that. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, like I said, if there's a consumer that comes in and says, hey, I want to put 10 grand down, are you going to tell them no? Or are you going to say, absolutely, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, but we do have a 3% surcharge for credit card processing. If that customer wants the miles or the points or whatever they want, and they want to do that, then by all means, pass the fees. The other thing I like to point out here, Becky, is a lot of dealers ask me all the time, should I pass the fees in finance? I mean, I can see where it makes sense in fixed ops, but my answer to that question is, there may be quite a few of your customers walking in your office now where they don't have an option. They don't have an option to use their debit card because they don't have the money in the bank. So, it's one of those sensitive topics. I tell dealers the biggest thing is to make sure you're compliant, do it right, make sure the customer knows their options, have the signage, do all the things that are necessary to check the boxes, but you also still have to give your customers options so they know what to expect.
So I guess what I'm asking, there are companies out there that are advocating for dealers to not pay the fee. They're saying, why should you pay the fee? Don't pay the fee. Let the customer pay the fee. So what's your take on that?
I mean, it's a dealer preference, dealers ask me this all the time. How many dealers are doing this? And if I were to answer that question last summer, I would say probably about 50% of new business is asking for some kind of surcharge program or dual pricing cash discount program. This year, 2025, it's more like 8 to 9 out of 10 dealers are looking for this program. And it's just because they are able to save thousands and thousands of dollars each month. And it's a hefty amount to be able to pass to the customer, but it's also a hefty expense you could potentially rid yourself of at least 75, 80% of it. So, because it's become so much more streamlined in other industries like, hospitality or food, for example, you go to restaurants these days, they're doing it. So I think, consumers are starting to feel like it's more common. Dealerships doing it, it's their preference, again, just be compliant.
So with your dealer pay, are you guys integrated?
Yes.
You are?
Yes.
How does that work?
So with the DMSs, various DMSs, whichever one you use, we've got the ability to pull data from that DMS real time. So specific to finance, we can pull the deals data. So we're going to get the MSRP. We're going to get any kind of information in there that has a deposit or down payment. And of course, all the consumer information. So if you've got a deal entered, so Becky, you got to put in the deal first. Once you pull that over into my system, it gives you numerous options to collect any kind of payment you want. If you've got a customer sitting in front of you and your dealership has, payment processing and finance, you can simply flip that transaction to that terminal for that customer to swipe, chip, or tap. Or you can send them, if they're not in the dealership, you can send them a hosted link. You can pay by whatever method that you want. So the idea here, especially knowing how competitive and fragile this process of the sale is, it's very, very important for dealers to really make sure they're capturing that payment fast. Don't send them down the street to the cashier's office to get that payment done. That's my first advice on the thing. If they're not in the dealership and they're doing a deposit, send them a link. It's very secure. It's very easy. It's very convenient. And then you've checked that box and your office manager is not mad at you.
Well, I kind of like the fact that we don't have a comptroller coming down on us for like, where is the down payment? Because we can't find it. It's nowhere to be found. And a lot of times it may or may not necessarily be the F&I manager's fault. I don't know what tricks up. I don't get it. Sometimes they do their due diligence and make sure that they put the information in the CRM. And frankly, it just doesn't show up or post it the next day for whatever reason. And everyone's chasing these down payments, which I got to tell you is super frustrating for everyone. And it's so time consuming. It is so time consuming. If I can tell you how many times, and you and I talked a little bit about this, but I can tell you how many times we have a customer, customers in a hurry. What are you doing in that F&I office? And they're doing everything that they can to do this transaction, and it takes forever long in a day. How long does it take for an F&I person to process a credit transaction with Dealer Pay?
10 seconds or less. And we did an actual study of this, actually. So we did a study where, a dealership either had a traditional terminal, or maybe they had a virtual terminal where they have to key enter all the things, right? If you had the option to pull the customer data right from the DMS, select their payment type, whether they're inside the dealership or outside the dealership, boom, done. And you get all the necessary documents signed. You've got all your fraud mitigation going on at the same time. And even better, the office has all the details. So when they come in to reconcile the batch, you're not in trouble anymore because they already know exactly what happened.
So I think that some of this, would you say that there's more potential for a violation with regard to traditional credit transactions?
No, I would just say, it's payments, right? There's a lot of things that dealers don't do compliantly. Like if someone's calling on the phone, you shouldn't be writing down their credit card number to put in later. You should be handling that transaction right then and there, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of things that we kind of talk about that fall under the umbrella of best practices. Okay. So there's a lot of things that are just done just to get the deal. And some of those things may not be worth it because that deal can unwind, or a chargeback happens, or fraud happens. So a lot of the stuff that we've really focused on with payment acceptance is to not only teach best practices, but also do all the work for the dealership so they can focus on the job that they're hired to do at the dealership.
So we have a hello there, Larry. Good to see you. Big agent. Do you know Larry? Because he is one of the biggest agencies in the country. He knows everybody. So if you know Larry, boy, let me
Hi,
tell you,
Larry.
you're in good hands. Hey, Larry, good to see you. I'm glad you said hi. And we have another question from Mike. So market conditions sometimes dictate the dealer's position. During great demand, it's easier to charge the fee. During down markets, it can be tough. Do you have a solution for today's market conditions? A little bit tougher today, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, we've embedded so many efficiencies, not just in finance, but fixed ops. We realize there's tough situations happening in car sales. So we're empowering dealers with multiple ways where they can be more efficient and productive. And I kind of say more in, more out, meaning that, if they're able to reduce transaction times, reduce loss because of chargebacks or fraud, but also have software systems that actually do a lot of the work for them, and even all the way to accounting. I mean, these guys are, really, when we analyze a dealer and realize how many manual steps there are and how many mistakes can happen, human error with each of those manual steps, that's been basically our goal, is to automate and streamline the process. So if you take out manual steps, you're reducing human error, thus reducing cost and making that dealership more secure and profitable.
And, to save some CSI along the way,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's
people
crucial.
do not understand what that's all
Yes.
about the next day when you're bringing customers in and you got to hit them with the hard news or something else happened. And it just blows up a good a good relationship, right? When things aren't done the right way.
Right. And I think COVID taught us something about convenience too, let the customer pay the way they want to pay, offer it up to them based on, their preferences. There's still a lot of dealers out there that will probably agree that, if you have an older consumer, let them write a check. If you have a younger consumer, let them pay with PayPal or Venmo or whatever they want to do. I mean, just having the options available are really what distinguishes payment companies from just credit card processors.
Right. And I think it's important for you. What I remember is that dealer pay is more of a personal relationship rather than transactional.
Yes.
And that's what you thrive on and you built a great reputation on. It's more right of working with your dealers. Yes. and helping them to understand the options that are available to them.
Yes. So, in comparison to some of my competition, and they're great, we kind of just took it a step further, so if we implement a dealership, we're actually showing up in person to do training. We're showing them, best practices. We're talking to them about how our system works in a dealership, because that's all we do is dealerships. So different from, like point here, click here. It's really like, hey, in order to increase CSI score, maybe send them a payment link so it's more convenient, but also, make sure you have all those final documents signed, right? So they're actually training the dealership based on what's actually functioning in their particular role or department.
Well, I think it's important to have these. I think it's important to have these different options that are available to our dealer and to walk them through all these options. And and I think for a consumer point of view, I think it's important. Why wouldn't we offer that? Or if I can tell you one thing, in my training, I've often said, be consistent in your pricing. Don't pick and choose. Be out there.
Right.
Don't prejudge based off of this or that scenario. Put it all out there. Be 100%. Go all in. And you'd be surprised what happens, right?
Right.
But it's when you pick and choose, when you make decisions for other folks, that it's not good for the customer. It's not good for the dealership.
Right. Right.
Right. It's all about, pick and choose your battles, but go in at 100% all the time. If that's who you are, if that's what you're all about, so be it. I mean, I think to me, that doesn't, for a customer who wants to pay by credit card, a bazillion dollars, there's a fee. It is. Maybe we'll absorb some of that at up to 3,000, maybe 2,000, whatever that dollar amount is. But after that, it's on you. And
Right.
I don't think that that's a bad thing. I do think that we have to have better processes put in place. I mean, I'm not trying to skip over steps to get someplace else. I do believe that we need to have better processes in place to be more efficient.
Right. Well, they say don't jump over dollars to save pennies.
Yeah. And because I've seen it in action. This is something that I talk to dealers about all the time. I'm not just a consultant who, gets in a dealership and we talk through some of this stuff, or a workshop, and I've done many of that in my career. But being in the seat been a very unique opportunity. Drinking from a fire hose and really seeing it firsthand and what's really taking place in that dealership. Frankly, we do need to do a better job. We have to be more efficient. And, processing credit card payments it's not something you think about. You don't really think about it, but we need to think about it. And we need to see how can we be more efficient with our time and the cost of doing business. What do you say to dealers? How can they, audit? Do they do a good job auditing the fees from the credit card company? Like, they sign up with this credit card company, and then are they doing their due diligence to ensure that the fee stays consistent? How's that work?
So here's what's the bad news about the payments industry. And this is probably the biggest hurdle that I face, when trying to win business from dealers, is the industry isn't transparent. There's a lot of payments salespeople out there, processors, independent sales offices. They love the dealer space just as much as I do. But what happens is they'll come in at a rate to win the business, and it'll change a few months later. So on top of that, Becky, they're sending a monthly statement that unless you're in this industry, you cannot make heads or tails of it. I mean, it's a puzzle. So dealers that are pretty savvy, have CFOs, office managers, controllers that know how to calculate effective rates. I think they are, kind of dialed in, but at the same time, it's still very confusing. I mean, I'm in this industry 25 years. I'm a certified payments professional. I've had all those certifications. Dealers don't have those certifications. And even the best accountants, they don't know how all of it works. So the folks in the payment space that do know how it works, there is somewhat of a manipulation going on from what an actual rate is for a particular transaction versus, what's overpaying, and with surcharge, and even right now, I mean, even dealers passing the fees, the credit card processors are making more money than ever. So
I tell you right now, I should be in that field.
I might be hiring.
Well, I'd have to call them up. Because if, here's the thing. I'm all about, and I'm probably, a needle in the, because I think we all have to do a better job in really determining cost of sale. We've got to get in and really dig in and really determine how much does this stuff cost, and applying some of these practices to impact, performance and creating a more efficient process. So some of the things, I'll talk about is, look, and I don't know it all. believe me, I only know what being in the stores. I mean, I don't feel, I'm constantly learning, trying to have my eyes, my ears open. We have good technology out there, Julie. We do. There is a lot of great stuff going on. But if you don't know it and know how it works, it obviously goes to deaf ears. You know, how many times has it been that a dealer has signed up for a certain thing, certain technology, read about it, saw it presented at an ATA, NCM 20 group, and then said, we're all in, we're doing this, we're going to make this happen. Come to heck or high water, it doesn't get handled. It doesn't get integrated in their everyday workflow.
Absolutely. I think that happens a lot.
It happens way too much.
Right.
And really understanding how this can work and make a difference speaks volumes. So when you go into your dealership for a new account, just presentation, how does that work for you? What are, I mean, I would think that this would be somewhat of an easy conversation for you.
It is, but you know, even as tech forward as our solutions are, it's our biggest job to still make it extremely user friendly, because we realize that even though there's all these moving parts and things happening behind the scenes, our audience, which is our dealers, their focus isn't to be payments experts. Their focus is to be finance or service or whatever it might be. So when we implement our solutions, you know, the training aspect of it is designed to be based on that particular department. You know, here's how you collect your deposit down payments. Here's how you do this. And you know, I think what's lost with a lot of other technology companies in the space is they do implementations that are remote or by a module or even AI these days, whereas you're still losing that human contact. So we still have the philosophy that we show up in person and I look at the finance person in their eye and say, this is how you do it. They're going to listen to me. They're going to understand it. And we're going to apply that to, these are the things that we're going to help solve for you. These are the problems that you're having today. This is how those get fixed. So I think even with technology, you still have to have, you know, human contact and, you know, be present.
Amen. I mean, right. You've got to be able to, it's got to make sense. It's got to be what's in it for me. It's got to, like, I hear that what the top is saying, how can we work this, integrate this into what we do every day? How is this going to impact my life? If you can show me how it's going to impact my life, make it easier where I can be more efficient, I'm all in.
Right.
What happened, and I'll go back to COVID days with digital retailing. Well, of course, during COVID, when that, you know, pandemic, you know, and we were shutting stores down, all that, everybody was looking for, hey, don't we have that special technology that we can have some sort of conversations with our customers online? And they were struggling to find, you know, this technology that seemed to make sense at that time. Today, some of that is, again, fallen. We're not utilizing it as much as, you know, we did then.
Sure.
I think what I'm going with, where I'm going with that whole thing is that I remember talking to dealers about the digital retailing piece, and they were like, Becky, this just doesn't do anything for us. It's just not working. And it's not working because we don't have that human factor with it. Mm-hmm. We don't have that individual like yourself coming in there and working and planning and making sure that it's sticking within their everyday workflow and what they do.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, you know, the concept of implementing a solution to fix problems isn't going to be received well if it isn't communicated with the individual doing it. So if I were to sell you my solutions, Becky, and you had a deal, you know, waiting, and you're trying to learn and be trained on a system by a computer or over the phone or webinar or whatever, you're not thinking about how this is going to fix your problems. You're thinking about this customer that's waiting for you to get a deal done so that you get paid.
Right. We're not, I'm not going to mess around with that if it's going to take any time of day, right? To go ahead.
You're going to say, but I got the deal done.
Why would I do that? And so I think that that has hurt a lot, frankly, a lot of tech companies, because they need to do a better job when it comes to making sure that that technology is understood in that everyday workflow. Right. So Mike has mentioned, no, Ken, sorry. How do you handle a valued account with a claims paid? Because we haven't really talked through, I guess, any kind of fixed ops stuff.
What do you mean by claims paid?
I don't really know. How do you handle a valued account with the claims paid? How do you handle a valued account? So they're valuing, it's a good customer, I would imagine. The claim is being paid. What do I need a credit card for?
Right. I mean, claims, with respect to, I don't know if he's talking about chargebacks or whatever that might be in reference to. But yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother animal with respect to, what we talked about with fraud mitigation and loss prevention and things like that.
Well, I don't know. Thanks, Ken. I appreciate the question. That's for sure.
Sorry, Ken. Elaborate, and I'll do my best.
To the customer cringe, but okay. So I just wanted to make sure that. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. Administrator pays a claim via authorization, and the dealer pays the fee.
Administrator pays a claim with an authorization and dealer pays the fee. So I would assume this means on a transaction, the administrator being the office, the accountants, I'm not really sure.
The administrator, the product provider, will go ahead and pay the claim on the vehicle service contract, let's just say.
Oh, okay. I'm on the same page now. So,
and then the dealer pays the fee.
Sorry, Ken. I'm on your page now. So that is an area that is still a challenge for a dealer to pass fees. So service contracts, warranties, traditionally they're paying with a prepaid card, whereas it's a fixed amount. So if they're paying either the full repair order or even part of the repair order, they are not going to authorize that card to allow for any surcharge or added costs. So we usually see this in dealers. It's about 15, sometimes 20% of their volume that falls in that category. So you, unfortunately, at least to my knowledge today, are not allowed to pass the fee on those transactions. Dealer pays the fee, Ken. Dealer pays the fee, unfortunately, on those warranty payments.
Okay. There it is. Chris, so I think he means the admin reimbursed the customer, but the customer paid the fee. Yeah,
I mean, it depends on, obviously the warranty or the service contract company and how they pay. A lot of dealers I've heard have encouraged them to pay with ACH. So there is no fee to even talk about. But there's a benefit to the service contract companies by using a card, right? So that's one of those areas in dealerships that, the customer is either paying a portion of the repair order, or the warranty company is paying the other portion, or the whole thing. But those are transactions where dealers, at least currently, are not allowed to pass the fee.
Okay. So if I get this right, I'm learning.
Good.
So there was a admin. Okay, so the claim was approved by the product provider. If the maybe additional fees that are associated with the claim, the individual is paying by credit card, which means the dealer can't keep the fee.
The dealer can't pass the fee on a transaction where the warranty company is using a prepaid card.
Gotcha.
If the customer's
I got it. Prepaid card. Okay, yeah. Prepaid card. Okay. Yep. Okay. All right. Makes sense. Got it. Okay. What is the best practice for the dealer? Change how the admin pays? Maybe
EFT isn't really a thing, but ACH is. I guess you could kind of call it the same thing, electronic funds transfer. But yes, I mean, adding more of the checking or banking element to it as opposed to that prepaid or that credit card is going to be better for the dealer, because ultimately, you know, they're not going to give you an option. At least currently, I say that a lot because I do feel like this is an area that could change, but they're not going to give you an option to surcharge on those transactions.
Okay, it's good for me to know. I wouldn't know this one. Correct. So that's a good
thing.
Yay! So you got this. This is good. So it makes sense. I mean, I can see the prepaid credit card. You can't transfer that over, right? And so I guess that sort of makes sense, right? That it does make sense as far as that goes. But I think it's important for a dealer, you know, as we talk through this, that first and foremost, is it efficient? Is your credit processing efficient? You know, I would say to a GM, do yourself a favor. Sit in with an F&I manager and have them process. No, in fact, I'll tell you what, you process the credit card payment. Once you process that credit card payment, you'll never want to do it ever again. It's just mind-blowing how long it actually takes. It just is. And all the headaches. I can't even imagine that your phone wouldn't even be blowing up.
Well, I mean, hopefully this podcast gets out there, Becky,
well,
because
hopefully we'll make that happen for you. I'm going to have to be your agent. I got something for you guys. You got to listen to me now. This is super cool, great stuff. And
and one of the things that's neat too is, you know, let's just say you do capture an electronic payment for a deposit or down payment, right? Now you've got a customer, right? So you've got the customer. Let's transition them to fixed ops. Let's continue that experience from sales and finance over to fixed ops, and with their customer information, with their payment information, with everything that we're collecting and processing, it's benefiting the customer. You know, reward your customer for being a customer.
You know, why drag the customer through the mud? And we do it all the time. It's all the time. And if, you know, if you can't go ahead and process the credit transaction there in F&I, I'll be back. They get up, they get to the cashier's office. They'll only spend forever long in a day trying to go ahead and process that while you got 5 other customers waiting, coming out of service, for crying out loud, to be able to process it. I think what happens is that folks haven't taken the time to sit down and really plan this out and realize what it's like to process a credit transaction in a dealership. And I also think it takes time to sit in and determine the cost of sale. How much does it cost to write that book of business? And so, like you said, okay, they sign up a new credit card company 3 months later. Guess what? The fee has changed. When's the last time you've checked that out and determined, is this the right way for you to go? There is just, I had, you know, if you think about it, man, maybe that should have been a business I should have been. That's a pretty tricky business, I gotta say. But I think dealers are smart. They're resilient. They should get this. This is like why would you put yourself through this misery if you don't have to? It just makes it just doesn't make any sense. It's an accountability side. My current group switched to this. So you already have this guy. He's already yours. He's giving you testy questions, or me.
I know.
I won't
love
even say
it,
I know
though.
some of this stuff, but you do.
I love
That's
it.
good.
You know, we work with a lot of auto associations too. And a lot of what I do on podcasts and other things is really education. You know, I call myself the sales lady extraordinaire, Becky, but I really do like to educate dealers, make sure that they've got all their processes buttoned up, because, you know, at the end of the day, this dynamic of where dealers are with, you know, sales and finance versus fixed ops, I mean, they have to stay dynamic. They have to stay forward thinking, and obviously watch costs. So,
Amen.
you know, it's
especially today. I mean, it's like it doesn't, you know, everything, it all counts. And especially now, you know, look at different ways of doing business. Does it make sense to do this or that or the other? Look at compliance. Look at, you
yes.
know, have I set myself up to get, you know, hit with a lawsuit, you know, and how much is that going to cost when it's all said and done? I mean, these are things that you have to sit down, take time to plan. And I suggest, you know, it used to be years ago, I would do this exercise and I would say, do you understand what it takes? And I was talking to sales folks and I was like, do you understand what it takes to make sure that a transaction is complete? We don't want to get the customer to come back in and sign the next day because it's not. So we took all the paper, all the forms, and we taped them together. And by the time out of the, you know, out of the, I mean, it was just forever long in the showroom. It made a good point, because then they got to see firsthand, what does it take to write a deal? I think it's important that GM, that dealer needs to sit in there and understand what it takes to write a deal, to process that credit card payment. And once they realize how brutal it is and how much they're paying when they don't need to be paying as much, I think that would be a beneficial exercise. Customers want to pay via American Express in Texas. Oh, geez, what are the rules about selling that the vehicle? Oh, I guess utilizing an American Express card. Don't leave home without it.
Well, the rules have changed with American Express. The good news with the rule change is they're no different than any other card. So I don't care if it's a Visa, MasterCard, Discover, or Amex. Today's best practices with payment processing, that all card brand transactions have to be equal. So you can't treat one different than another, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what was it? American Express used to be like 5% or something. I don't know.
I don't know if it was that high, but it was high. I mean, and nowadays
it was 3%. Maybe the others were 2.5% at the time.
Yeah. It's definitely a higher transaction.
And Mike Moran, super cool guy. You know, Mr. Mike Moran has the thank you video, and he is amazing, successful in the automotive industry, in the power sport industry, RV industry, real estate industry, big time, Mr. Mike Moran. So he's good people to know, just FYI. And then everyone here tonight has been gracious. I'm so glad everybody has had a chance to come in and have this great interactive conversation with us. I really appreciate it. And then Steve Apicello, do you know Steve?
I don't. Hi, Steve.
You don't know Steve? Everybody knows Steve.
Everybody knows Steve.
Yeah, Strategic DX. Leadership and learning are independent sales to each other. Bravo. He's got a great technology as well that really streamlines, after sale process and really getting back in front of the customer and having that really good communication between sales and service. So that's super good guy. He's a super cool guy. And then Ken, no, do you record a lien holder in that case? Good, Ken. I'm glad you're having all the good questions here. Because I don't know. What do you mean?
I don't know what he means.
You record a lien hold. Okay. I think he's talking about the paying the full price on American Express. Is there a lien holder on that through American Express or any other credit card company if you're paying?
Just kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier. It depends on the lender agreements that you have with that particular, company. And, it's loosened over the years, but, borrowed money on borrowed money is obviously never really recommended. So I encourage, I don't want to be the person who says that, it's 100% by the books. It's dependent on the dealership's contracts with their lenders.
Okay. Well, before we head off tonight, I just want to make sure you guys know that I am hitting it hard, and I'm, for tech startup companies, insurance providers, allied industry folks, and all, I am in search of some great sponsors for this live talk with Becky Chernek. I know it's going places, and for those that want to go with me, or we can go together, feel free to give me a call, please. And I made sure to put my number there at 866-894-1899. Or, of course, check out my bio along with my link to my website, and my phone number's there as well. And let's hook up and let's talk about it. I've got another question here with Ken. It's not a dealer agreement. It is with the credit card. So I can't even imagine. I mean, I don't think so. I don't see a dealer doing a lien holder on a credit card. They maybe should think about it, but they're taking the risk of, ensuring that customer is going to continue to make payment on the credit card. The thing is, and I think that's been an issue, and I don't know if that's ever been really resolved, but the issue was, especially when you're financing, you're showing $3,000, $5,000, whatever dollars down payment, 6, 10, whatever. Now a customer can stop payment on that credit card.
Just like a check.
Right. And then the dealer, unfortunately, doesn't really know. It takes a while for that for them to be notified that the customer has stopped payment.
Sometimes, not with us.
And it can take up to maybe 60 days before they know that a credit card payment someone has disputed that credit card down payment. So if that's the case, that nulls and voids the contract.
Yeah.
That's why my understanding was a lot of dealers they only authorized so much of that credit card down payment on a finance deal because of that.
Right.
Have you heard the same thing?
Yeah. I mean, hopefully your credit card provider is notifying you of chargebacks sooner than 60 days. I would say that if that's common practice, that's not good. That's not normal. I mean, if one of our dealers has a chargeback, regardless of the department they're in, we're notifying them ASAP and giving them the ability to submit a rebuttal. Here's the thing. It's all about getting your signatures. It's all about, in fixed ops, if they sign the RO and you have a signed receipt and they say, well, I'm not paying for this, then, you've got documentation. So what's great about what we've built in our system is we're mandating those signatures and those final documents. So we're basically powering dealers with the tools to prevent that chargeback or to prevent that loss or even deflect it to begin with mitigation tools. So, even though there's a lot of focus on borrowed money and credit cards and things like that, it's just really all about, dotting your I's and crossing your T's and making sure that you're compliant and you're following best practices and, disclosing everything you need to disclose to the customer.
No, I think that's good. I think that, again, I don't know what the protocol is for letting a dealer look. even if they let the dealer know, sometimes the dealer doesn't know. I mean,
Right.
they don't do what they need to be doing to make sure that, that down payment has been actually received and recorded. Maybe most of them do. I don't know. But I do know that that's been somewhat of a concern. And again, that can play on whether it be the credit card company or whether that be the dealer. But at the end of the day, when that customer takes delivery, and if they stop payment on the credit card, then that contract is null and void.
Right.
So, but I think Ken, I got to tell you, you got some good questions there. I think for his last one, he's made the customer's paying for the car 100% with a credit card upfront. I get it. We get that. And I didn't mean to throw that question out there, but to confuse you, but I don't see a dealer using the credit card as a lien holder. I've not seen that before. I don't know. I haven't seen it. So I think we had a great evening here, Julie. And I want to tell you again, I really appreciate the time that you spent with us tonight. And I mean, you are a superstar in the industry. A lot of folks know you, and I'm super excited again to have you here on my live talk with Becky Chernek. I hope to get you back again. It would be terrific, awesome. And I've got a great show in store for you guys next week. I have Select FI, and we're talking about making sure that we get customers on the right car to begin with, and desking those deals the right way. So that way we're putting more deals together. So hope to see you guys next Thursday at 8 p.m. with me and Select FI. And again, Julie, thank you so much for a terrific job tonight. You've been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Becky. Thanks so much.